U.S. President Donald Trump says progress is being made in peace talks with Iran, claiming he had received a, quote, big present from Iran. His comments come as strikes continue across the Middle East. And Qatar Energy has declared force majeure after missile strikes damaged key LNG facilities in Ras Laffan. The disruption is affecting long-term gas supply contracts, including shipments to South Korea. And South Korea is moving to shield its economy from the fallout of the Middle East crisis. Seoul is launching a prime minister-led emergency economic task force to coordinate the government response. We begin with the claims of progress in peace talks with Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump says Tehran even sent him a present, saying it shows Washington is dealing with the right people. The comments come as strikes continue across the Middle East. Park Geon-woo leads our coverage tonight.
Israeli forces launched a wave of strikes on infrastructure in Tehran from Tuesday night into Wednesday. Iranian state media says the Revolutionary Guards responded with a new round of attacks on targets in Israel, as well as U.S. bases in the region including Kuwait and Jordan. Drones hit a fuel tank at Kuwait International Airport, causing a fire, while an Iranian missile strike also wounded at least 9 people in central Israel. Iran also said a projectile struck the grounds of its Bushehr nuclear power plant, calling it a renewed attack by the U.S. and Israel. Despite the ongoing conflict, U.S. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that talks with Iran were ongoing, adding that Tehran is eager to reach a deal. In fact, Trump said he had received a present from Iran worth a huge amount of money without revealing what exactly it was.
It was oil and gas related, and it was a very nice thing they did, but what it showed me is that we're dealing with the right people.
However, Tehran has denied that any negotiations are underway, vowing to continue its fight. According to the New York Times, Washington has delivered a 15-point proposal to Tehran through Pakistan aimed at ending the conflict. The proposal reportedly includes dismantling Iran's nuclear capabilities, halting uranium enrichment, and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, the U.S. is moving additional forces to the region, raising concerns of further escalation. Thousands more U.S. Marines were on their way to the Gulf, and the Army was preparing to deploy at least thousands of troops from the 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East in the coming days. With fighting ongoing and diplomacy uncertain, attention is focused on how and when the conflict might come to an end. Park Geon-woo, Arirang News.
As uncertainty continues, Britain is calling for international action to reopen the Strait of Hormuz as concerns grow over global energy supplies. South Korea is among the countries backing those efforts. Our foreign affairs correspondent, Oh Soo-young, covers this effort.
Britain is pushing to move forward on international efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz as concern grows over the prolonged disruption to one of the world's most important oil shipping routes. On Tuesday, The Guardian reported London has offered to host a security conference on reopening the strait. The summit could be held in London or at a naval headquarters in Portsmouth, with the aim of building a broader coalition and enough momentum to open a safe route when the time is right. The defence official cited by the paper made clear the effort under discussion is not for the height of the fighting, but for after major combat has eased. Sitting above the strategic waterway, Iran has effectively closed Hormuz to all but approved vessels, while the United States has pressured its partners to help reopen the strait militarily, which key allies have rejected. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has said allies are discussing how best to reopen the strait without announcing any immediate deployment. A UK-led joint statement last week has now expanded to 30 signatory countries, including South Korea, Australia and the United Arab Emirates. The updated British government text says they're ready to support appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage and welcome countries already engaged in preparatory planning.
Right now, most countries are trying not to appear as though they'll join U.S. military operations. They're aiming for some kind of arrangement with Iran through negotiations to secure safe passage. So statements like this are just enough to signal that they're not all opposed to the U.S. That seems to be the guiding principle and the limit of most countries' actions.
Seoul, for its part, has been sustaining diplomacy. In his call with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi on Monday, South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Hyun called on Tehran to halt attacks on civilians and civilian facilities in Gulf states, and to ensure safe navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. On Tuesday, he also held talks with Oman and Kuwait on energy supply, economic security, and the safety of South Korean nationals and vessels in the region. Choi is expected to continue those discussions in France, where he is attending the expanded session of the Group of 7 Foreign Ministers meeting of 2026, while also holding bilateral talks with key counterparts. Oh Si-young, Arirang News.
In related news, missile attacks on Qatar's energy facilities have disrupted LNG exports, prompting Qatar Energy to suspend several supply contracts, including with South Korea. Seoul is now coordinating with Gulf partners to secure alternative energy supplies. Lee Seung-jae has the story.
Qatari state-owned energy company Qatar Energy has declared force majeure on long-term liquefied natural gas supply contracts with South Korea, China, Italy, and Belgium after missile attacks damaged key energy facilities. Strikes last week targeted installations belonging to the company in Ras Laffan, disrupting operations and affecting approximately 17% of Qatar's exports. The clause allows companies to suspend contractual obligations when unforeseen events make performance impossible. Qatar's energy minister said repairs to the damaged LNG facilities could take 3 to 5 years. With energy supplies already affected by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, South Korea has moved to strengthen diplomatic coordination with Gulf partners. Foreign Minister Choi Hyun held phone talks with Oman's Foreign Minister Badr bin Hamad Al Busaidi on Tuesday and requested cooperation in securing alternative supplies of liquefied natural gas and crude oil. During the call, Cho also thanked Oman for its support for the movement of South Korean peacekeeping troops deployed in the region, as well as for its help evacuating South Korean nationals after the outbreak of hostilities at the end of February. The Omani foreign minister noted that major infrastructure across Gulf countries has suffered damage from recent Iranian attacks and called for Seoul's continued interest and support. Both sides agreed to deepen bilateral ties and cooperate in efforts to restore peace and stability in the Middle East. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea is stepping up its response to cushion the economy from the impact of the Middle East crisis by creating an emergency economic task force. Our top office correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
South Korea is stepping up its response to help cushion the economy against the impact of the Middle East crisis. At a briefing on Wednesday, Prime Minister Kim Min-seok announced the launch of an emergency economic task force.
With the conflict in the Middle East continuing for more than 3 weeks, its economic impact, including energy and raw material shortages, is expanding. The Emergency Economic Headquarters, led by the Prime Minister, is an upgraded and expanded version of the existing Emergency Economic Ministers meeting.
The task force will bring together the finance, industry, health, and foreign affairs ministers, as well as the chairperson of the Financial Services Commission. Each will oversee a dedicated response team. It will support the implementation of key measures discussed at emergency economic meetings chaired by President Lee Jae-myung.
With the emergency economic meetings chaired by the President serving as the top control tower, we will mobilize all available national resources. To support this, the government will respond as one team through the Emergency Economic Headquarters.
It is set to begin operations next week and will meet twice weekly. The announcement comes a day after President Lee called for an emergency response system, warning of growing uncertainty in the supply of crude oil and natural gas amid the conflict in the Middle East.
민생과 경제산업 전반에 발생할지 모를 중대한 위기에 대처하기 위해서 정부 차원의 비상대응 체계를 선제적으로 가동해야겠습니다.
As part of the efforts, the Blue House told reporters on Wednesday that it is setting up what it calls an emergency economic situation room to work in coordination with the emergency economic headquarters. Headed by Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Hoon-sik, the situation room will consist of 5 response teams that will oversee their counterparts at the PM-led task force. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea has launched its domestically produced supersonic fighter jet. President Lee Jae-myung called the launch of KF-21 a springboard toward the country's vision to become the world's top 4 global defense powerhouses. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min has the story.
It was a decade in the making, and President Lee Jae-myung hailed the first delivery of a KF-21 as a symbol of South Korea's aspiration for self-reliant defense over more than half a century.
KF-21의 양산을 통해 마침내 우리 대한민국은 땅과 바다에 이어 하늘에서까지 우리 기술과 의지로 평화를 지키는 무기를 보유하게 됨으로써 자주 국방의 위용을 떨치게 됐습니다.
He was speaking at a ceremony on Wednesday at the Korea Aerospace Industries headquarters in the southern city of Sacheon to celebrate the launch of South Korea's new supersonic fighter jet, produced using its own technology. The event was attended by related officials, foreign ambassadors, and private firms.
KF-21의 성공을 대한민국 방위산업 4대 강국 도약을 향한 든든한 발판으로 삼을 것입니다.
The commander-in-chief highlighted the jet's outstanding performance and low maintenance costs. He vowed to spare no effort and investment in nurturing the nation's defense industry and share know-how with its partners.
나아가 협력국의 세계 최고의 무기 체계뿐만 아니라 우리가 가진 기술과 개발 과정의 경험을 함께 공유하여 K-방산의 경쟁력을 더욱 높여갈 것입니다.
South Korea reportedly plans to sign a contract with Indonesia to export 16 KF-21 fighter jets. Since the blueprint was unveiled in 2001, the country officially launched the development project in 2015 and successfully completed its final flight test in January. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The South Korean Navy submarine Dosan Ahn Chang-ho left the peninsula on Wednesday to take part in a joint exercise with the Royal Canadian Navy in the first trans-Pacific deployment for Korea's naval submarine. The 3,000-ton vessel is set to sail 14,000 kilometers to Escalating Harbor in Victoria, arriving in late May before conducting combined drills with Canada in early June. It will then join the U.S.-led RIMPAC exercise in Hawaii later that month. The mission will mark the first Pacific crossing by a South Korean Navy submarine and its longest voyage on record. The Navy says the deployment is meant to underscore both the submarine's operational capability and cooperation between the South Korean and Canadian navies. Latest data for the month of January show a subtle yet tangible shift in South Korea's demographic portrait, with both the number of newborns and marriages on the rise. Kim Do-yeon has the latest numbers.
South Korea's demographic landscape saw a bright spot at the start of the year, with births and marriages both posting double-digit growth. According to the Ministry of Data and Statistics on Wednesday, 26,916 babies were born in January 2026. That is an 11.7% jump from a year earlier and the highest volume for any January in 7 years. Following 9 consecutive years of decline since 2016, January births have now recorded double-digit growth for 2 straight years. The total fertility rate, the average number of children a woman is expected to have, near the 1.0 mark, rising by 0.10 on year to 0.99. This increase was primarily driven by women in their 30s. Notably, the proportion of firstborns rose to 63.5%, while the shares of second and third children shrank. However, officials urge caution before calling this a permanent reversal.
January is typically a month with an exceptionally high number of births. Over the past decade, January has accounted for roughly 9.7% of the annual total. So while the numbers came out strong with a large on-year increase, whether this trend will continue is another matter.
Marriages, a leading indicator for future births, also surged. The country saw 22,640 registered marriages in January, up 12.4% on year. This marks the largest volume for the month since 2018 and the third highest growth rate for a January since 1997. Meanwhile, deaths fell 17.6% to 32,454. The agency attributed this sharp drop to a base effect from last year when harsh weather conditions caused a spike in fatalities. Consequently, the nation's natural population decline slowed to 5,539. However, major cities like Seoul and Incheon bucked the national trend, recording natural population growth. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Over half of South Korea's top 500 listed companies by revenue posted an on-year rise in operating profit last year. According to data research firm for CEO Score, total operating profit for the 254 firms included in its analysis rose almost 24% on year in 2025, reaching a combined 228.27 trillion won. SK hynix posted the largest increase, followed by Samsung Electronics with a combined operating profit of some $61 billion, up over 61%. Their gains accounted for almost 79% of the total increase. The remaining 252 firms posted simply around a 7% increase in operating profit. In other news, streaming service Netflix says its live coverage of BTS's free comeback concert that took place at Gwanghwamun Square this past weekend captured over 18 million viewers. Lee Eun-jin tells us more.
Netflix says 18.4 million people worldwide tuned in to watch BTS comeback live Arirang on Saturday. The figures include people who watched the initial live stream, as well as those who streamed the performance again within the following day. According to Netflix on Tuesday, the show ranked in the weekly top 10 in 80 countries, while reaching the #1 spot in 24 countries, including South Korea, Mexico, Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Bulgaria. Netflix also reported that its concert-related content has reached 2.62 billion global social impressions to date, solely on its official channels, while numerous hashtags linked to BTS and Netflix trended around the world. This was their first time reunited as a full group in nearly 4 years, showing that their influence has only intensified over their hiatus since their last concert in October 2022. The members had left to complete their mandatory military service. The Gwanghwamun Square concert precedes the K-pop megastar's sold-out world tour, set to cover 34 regions from Singapore and Tokyo to Munich and Los Angeles between April 2026 and March 2027. The tour will commence on April 9th in Goyang, South Korea. Netflix also added that their documentary BTS The Return will premiere on March 27th, presenting an unprecedented behind-the-scenes look at RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook regrouped for their latest album release. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea's historic Jongmyo Shrine has been selected as the official face of the 48th meeting of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee in Busan this coming July. An official emblem, newly unveiled by the Korea Heritage Service earlier this Wednesday, features the grand sweeping tiled roof of Jongmyo's main hall, the country's first heritage site. The design reportedly symbolizes the preservation of 600 years of royal tradition, as well as global connections, peace, and cooperation. Daejeon City, often called South Korea's city of bread, is drawing crowds with a unique taxi service for bakery lovers. The bread taxi takes visitors on a guided tour of the city's most famous bakeries. Jo Young-eun was there.
The city of Daejeon has turned its downtown bakeries into major tourist attractions, drawing visitors into a unique culinary experience. At the center of this trend is the so-called bread taxi, a unique ride that guides passengers through the city.
The bread taxi launched last November and gained popularity among brand enthusiasts as it tours famous bakeries around Daejeon City.
이 택시 운행은 어떻게 시작하시게 된 건가요?
I created this service for people who love Daejeon's bread. I hope it becomes a bucket list experience for all bread lovers in Korea, and, if I may be ambitious, for people all around the world.
The driver greets passengers at the station with a big smile, accompanied by bread-themed dolls. Passengers receive a welcome kit that includes a guidebook to Daejeon's bakeries, along with tasting plates, utensils, and wet wipes. Visitors are pleasantly surprised by the menu-style guide and foldable tables similar to those on airplanes. The taxi's first stop is a bakery that's famous for its egg tarts. The driver tracks each bakery's opening hours and baking schedules, ensuring passengers can enjoy freshly made pastries without waiting long lines or missing them altogether.
이 집에서 에그 타르트 다음으로 맛있는 게 얘예요. 피자. 피자빵. 요건 나중에 집에 가서 에어프라이어로 데워 먹어도 돼요.
A stop at one of the city's largest bakeries fills visitors with excitement as they show their passion for discovering new flavors. The driver explains the best menu items at each bakery, along with tips on how to best enjoy and store different types of bread and pastries. He even recommends unique pairings such as ramen and kimchi rice bowls.
네, 조합을 너무 좋아해요.
Passengers savor each combination at their own pace, fully enjoying the experience as they eagerly try the driver's top recommendations.
Once I got on, the driver was so kind, it felt almost like being with family, so I could relax, enjoy the bread, and have a great time.
As a city renowned for its rich bakery culture, Daejeon is attracting more and more visitors with these unique tourism experiences. 조영은, Arirang News, Daejeon.
It's been unusually mild lately. Temperatures are about a month ahead of the average. But we do have a large day-to-night temperature swing of around 15 to 20 degrees, so make sure to dress in layers. Air quality is still a big concern. Ultra-fine dust levels will stay bad nationwide. Under clear skies, dry weather advisories are in place. Meanwhile, there are wind and wave advisories for waters off Jeju-do Island through late this afternoon, and for the eastern South Sea and waters south of Jeju-do into early tomorrow. As for temperatures, Seoul will start the day at 7 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon at 4 degrees, Jeju at 10 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 19 degrees, Chuncheon at 22 degrees, Busan at 18 degrees. We'll keep this mild and sunny spring weather through this week, with rain expected in the south and Jeju-do Island next Monday. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
And that's all we have for tonight. Thank you for watching. This was Kim Mo-gyun filling in for Kim Dami. I'll be back with Within the Frame at 8:30 p.m. Korea time, so stay tuned.